Riveras don't do government work, my mother announced to the ballroom full of platinum donors, her voice carrying over the string quartet. Such a shame when children disappoint. 300 guests at the Rivera Foundation's annual charity gala turned to look at me standing near the catering entrance. I'd been relegated there, not at the family table, not even in the main seating area. Just close enough to be acknowledged as family, far enough to be dismissed. My father nodded gravely. Our daughter chose civil service. We had such hopes for her joining the foundation, building the family legacy. Instead, she processes paperwork for the state. My brother Carlos stood beside them, wearing his VP of Operations title like a crown. Some people just don't have vision for real impact. They need the safety of government cubicles. The donors laughed politely. Uncomfortable but complicit. This charity gala celebrated the Rivera Foundation's work providing healthcare access to underserved communities. 15 years of operation. 12 million in annual donations. A family legacy of giving. Except I'd been reviewing their financial records for 6 months. I pulled out my phone. Accessed the secure state portal with my credentials. Senior Compliance Auditor, State Health Fund Authority. The investigation file was complete. The evidence was devastating. When the 4 Health Fund Authority investigators entered through the main doors, badges displayed, subpoenas ready, the celebration ended abruptly. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask, have you ever watched people destroy themselves while mocking you? Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Let me tell you about my disappointing career choice. After college, I'd been expected to join the Rivera Foundation. My parents had created positions for Carlos and my sister Elena. Director-level roles. 6-figure salaries. Company cars. The family business of charitable giving. I'd looked at the books instead. Asked questions about administrative costs that consumed 47% of donations. Wondered why healthcare providers were paid through shell companies. Questioned expense reports showing $180,000 in annual travel costs for a local charity. You don't understand how foundations work, my father had said. These are normal operational expenses. They're not normal, I'd replied. They're possibly fraudulent. That conversation ended my place in the family business. So I took a job with the State Health Fund Authority. Started as a junior auditor making $52,000. Learned nonprofit compliance regulations. Studied healthcare fund misappropriation patterns. Worked my way to senior auditor over 7 years. My family called it government paperwork. Called me small-minded and unable to see the bigger picture. Stopped inviting me to foundation events. Told donors I'd chosen a different path. What they didn't know, the State Health Fund Authority investigates charitable healthcare fraud. And I'd been assigned to investigate the Rivera Foundation 8 months ago, before I disclosed the family conflict and recused myself from lead investigator status. But I'd done the preliminary audit. Found everything. Documented everything. Handed it to my supervisor with a recommendation for criminal investigation. Tonight's gala was about to become an arrest. The lead investigator, Director Patricia Orozco, approached the stage. "Excuse me," her voice cut through the confused murmuring. "I'm Director Orozco, State Health Fund Authority. We have warrants to seize records related to the Rivera Foundation's Healthcare Fund Administration." My father stood, face flushing red. "This is outrageous. We're in the middle of a charity event. Mr. Rivera, we have evidence of systematic misappropriation of healthcare funds. We're executing search warrants for your financial records, and we have arrest warrants for you, Maria Rivera and Carlos Rivera." My mother's champagne glass shattered on the marble floor. Director Orozco gestured to the state investigators fanning through the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Rivera Foundation has been under investigation for healthcare fund fraud. Your donations may have been misused. You'll be contacted for victim interviews." 300 donors sat in stunned silence as investigators began boxing foundation documents from the stage displays. Carlos found his voice. "This is insane. We run a legitimate charity. Our daughter," he pointed at me, "our bitter daughter who couldn't hack it in the real world is behind this." Director Orozco turned to look at me standing near the catering entrance. Rivera disclosed the family relationship immediately and recused herself from lead investigation. However, her preliminary audit uncovered evidence of healthcare fund fraud exceeding $8.7 million over 6 years. The ballroom went completely silent. Your family foundation claimed to provide direct healthcare payments to uninsured patients, Orozco continued. Instead, you routed funds through shell companies, inflated administrative costs, and used charitable donations for personal expenses. That's criminal fraud under state healthcare fund statutes. She pulled out handcuffs. Carlos Rivera, you're under arrest for violations of State Healthcare Fund Act Section 24.7, fraudulent use of charitable healthcare donations. Let me tell you what I'd found in those preliminary audits. The Rivera Foundation raised $12 million annually. According to their marketing, 85% went directly to patient care. The reality was different. Administrative costs, $5.6 million, 47%. Healthcare provider payments, $4.8 million, 40%. Actual patient care, $1.6 million, 13%. The healthcare provider payments went to companies I couldn't verify. I traced them, shell LLCs with no employees, no facilities, no medical licenses. Registered to addresses that didn't exist. I followed the money further. Those shells paid consulting fees to another set of companies. Those companies paid the Rivera family members directly. Salaries, bonuses, expense reimbursements. The foundation was a pass-through. Donors thought they were funding healthcare. Actually, they were funding my family's lifestyle. $180,000 in travel costs. My parents' European vacations. $240,000 in medical equipment. Luxury cars titled to shell companies used personally. $95,000 in facility maintenance. Renovations to my parents' home. Over 6 years, $8.7 million diverted from patient care to family enrichment. All of it documented in the foundation's own records. They'd kept meticulous books, just never expected anyone with actual audit training to review them. Certainly never expected the disappointed daughter with the government job to be a senior healthcare fraud investigator. The arrests proceeded methodically. My father handcuffed. Maria, call the lawyers. This is a misunderstanding. My mother being read her rights. How can they do this? We're philanthropists. Carlos, face pale. This is entrapment. That's illegal. Tell them, Dad. Director Orozco approached me as other investigators processed my family. Ms. Rivera, your preliminary work was excellent. The evidence you documented made this case airtight. I know this can't be easy. It's not easy, I agreed. But it's necessary. They stole from people who needed health care. The victims will testify. Patients who applied for foundation help and were denied while your family took European vacations on their donations. Orozco shook her head. The fraud was extensive and brazen. They thought nonprofit healthcare was too complicated for oversight. That charitable status protected them. They were wrong. Orozco closed her folder. You'll need to testify eventually. The defense will claim family vendetta. Let them. The bank records speak for themselves. The prosecution took 9 months. The evidence was overwhelming. Shell company formations. Fraudulent healthcare provider certifications. Bank transfers routing charitable funds to personal accounts. Tax returns showing family income that couldn't be explained by legitimate sources. The state's case was simple. The Rivera Foundation solicited donations for patient health care, then diverted 73% of those funds to family personal use through fraudulent shell companies. My family's defense was that these were normal administrative costs. That argument collapsed when prosecutors presented comparable foundations with administrative costs of 8 to 15%, not 47%. They tried to claim I had vendetta. That I'd manufactured evidence out of spite for being excluded from the foundation. The prosecution demolished that narrative. Ms. Rivera is a senior state auditor with 7 years of experience and an impeccable record. She followed standard investigative protocols, disclosed her conflict immediately, and recused herself from lead investigation. The evidence she documented isn't fabricated. It's from the Rivera Foundation's own financial records. They showed the jury the books. Every fraudulent transaction. Every shell company payment. Every personal expense disguised as charitable health care. My father's lawyer tried one last defense. The foundation still helped some patients. Doesn't that count? The prosecutor's response was brutal. They helped patients with 13% of donations while stealing 73% for personal use. That's not charity. That's theft with a tax exemption. The jury deliberated 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. All 3 defendants. Sentencing was severe. State healthcare fraud carried enhanced penalties because victims were vulnerable populations. My father, 8 years state prison, $8.7 million restitution permanent charity ban. My mother, 6 years joint restitution permanent charity ban. Carlos, 5 years joint restitution permanent charity ban. The judge's words: you exploited charitable giving to enrich yourselves while claiming to help vulnerable communities. You used your family name and foundation to commit systematic fraud. The state healthcare fund statutes exist precisely to prevent this abuse. You'll face the full consequences. 2 years later, I'm still processing paperwork. Senior compliance auditor, promoted to director of healthcare charity oversight. I supervise investigations across 43 counties. My team has identified $47 million in fraudulent charity healthcare schemes. The Rivera Foundation was dissolved. Assets liquidated. Proceeds went to legitimate healthcare charities actually serving patients. My family hasn't spoken to me since sentencing. Extended family split predictably. Half think I'm a vindictive bureaucrat, half think I did the right thing. The 300 donors from that gala? 72 have been interviewed as fraud victims. Many are cooperating with restitution efforts. Several thanked me for exposing the fraud. My parents get out in 6 and 4 years respectively. Carlos in 3. I've heard they're bitter, angry I destroyed the family legacy. But the legacy was fraud. The foundation was theft. The charity was a lie. What I learned: sometimes family legacy means crime. Sometimes disappointing your family means doing your job. Sometimes the government paperwork they mock is actually the investigation that exposes them. My family mocked state employees at their charity celebration. The audit files I'd compiled spoke louder than their dismissive speeches. Riveras don't do government work? This Rivera did. And this Rivera documented every fraudulent transaction they committed while calling me small-minded. The Health Fund Authority appeared with warrants. Their foundation needed criminal attorneys instead of celebration champagne. Sometimes the disappointed child is actually the ethical one. Sometimes government cubicles house investigators who dismantle family fraud. Sometimes charity galas end with arrests. The legacy they wanted me to join was criminal. The career they mocked was enforcement. The state employee they dismissed at the charity gala was the auditor who documented their crimes. The audit files spoke. The family listened from prison.